Hi guys, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to make some open frames for art on canvas. This comes in really handy when you find great art at the thrift store or secondhand and the frame is very distressed or just not your style. You can make these as simple or complex as you want. You can start with an already made open frame that's unfinished, and you can use like a rotary tool and do some simple carvings in it like that. You can add little fabric inserts like I have here, okay? And I also did a painted insert on the large one. So let's get started. So to begin, I started out with a long piece of wood that's 3.5 inches wide and 3/4 of an inch deep. All right, and I cut that with my saw at 45-degree angles, obviously, to get the to fit together like a frame. And I have an electric saw, but you could do it with a hand saw and a miter box. And I also got a decorative piece that's smaller. If you can see that. Okay, and also cut that at 45-degree angles. Now, when I'm measuring to know where to cut, I have my painting here. And when I'm holding up the wood to mark where I want to cut this, I want to cut it just past the edge of the painting so that the painting will sit inside the frame, okay? And then every piece from there would be measured from there. And then the inside piece, I measured half on the wood and half on the canvas, okay? This will keep the canvas in the frame. And when I was done with all my cutting, I sanded them down real quick with a fine grit sandpaper. And now I'm going to position them on the back side, so upside down. So I have my pieces of wood wrong side up. One I've got loosely attached with a clamp, and I have a clamp ready to fit this one. And I'm going to put some wood glue in the corner here. I'm going to push it into position. Obviously, put some newspaper under there if you don't want to damage whatever surface you're working on. I'm going to tighten this clamp first. Make sure they're tight up against each other and even. That should hold that in place, and I'll let it dry, and I'll work on my other corners. I finished gluing and stapling the back of the main part of the frame. This is the front side, and this is the back side of the little decorative piece of wood. You can see I had to switch staples and use a more shallow staple so it wouldn't poke through the front, but I did the same thing here, stapled the corners. And now I plan to put some wood glue here right along the edge and then use clamps to hold it in place. Putting a pretty thin layer. I don't want it seeping out everywhere because then I have to sand it off, which is fine on the flat pieces, but these decorative pieces it's a little tougher to get in there to do sanding. I let this dry and I filled in any gaps with wood filler and sanded it down. And I've already stained the back. Some of it's kind of leaking up here, but I'm going to go ahead and put red oak on this. I'm going to finish with dark walnut. Sometimes I have to mix more than one stain to get the exact color that I want, but I do want red undertones, so I'm starting with the red oak. I finished with the red oak and wiped off the excess. Now I'm going to do a coat of the dark walnut. The stain has dried, and now I'm putting black furniture wax in the, I'm going to brush it on the whole thing. I let the black furniture wax dry for a few days after I wiped it off. And now I am just applying a semi-gloss polyurethane to protect it. After my polyurethane dried, now I'm just going to put a few staples in to hold the canvas to the frame, but they're easily removable if I want to change the frame. With the needle nose plier, I attached this is 30-pound picture wire. That's more than enough for what I have here. And I attached it to this eyelet hook. And I measured the same distance down from the top on both sides and marked it. And then I just do the same thing to the other side. When I'm doing a frame with the wire, the top of the frame goes away from the wall naturally, but the bottom of the frame goes towards the wall. So I like to put a little rubber or cork thing on there to protect the wall. And depending on the condition of the back of the canvas, I sometimes cover this with paper, and I just glue the paper. If the canvas is really distressed in the back, because a lot of times I get these secondhand, sometimes they are not in good condition. This is a slight variation of the previous frame I did. Instead of doing a piece of decorative wood here, I bought just a little flat piece of pine, and I cut it at the 45-degree angle just like the others, and I Mod Podged some simple fabric over it, and then I'm going to, and of course stapled it in place, and I'm going to go ahead and just apply this with wood glue. So that's a variation that you can do also, and you can do obviously any color fabric that you feel like is appropriate for the painting. For this one, which is going to be a little more ornate than the other ones, I have three main pieces of wood that I'm starting with. This right here is 2-inch casing, like for doors or windows, and it's got these little grooves in it which work well for glue, so that comes in handy. I'm actually going to work on this surface instead of the smooth surface because I want to use these grooves for my glue. Then the next thing is this decorative molding. It's got egg and dart pattern on it, and that will be lined up at the edge of the frame like that, and then I will fill that and stain these, and hopefully it won't look too different after I sand down that that casing. And then this will come in after and be lined up like so. Okay, so that gives me a decorative surface here, and then also it leaves room here for the canvas so that it will all be flush. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue my outermost piece of wood to the edge of my casing, and they're only going to line up on one side because I left them the way they are. They need to be trimmed at the saw, but I'll get it all glued together and then do one final cut to make sure it's totally even. So I'm just going to put my wood glue here. Okay, whoops. Line that up on the one side to make sure it's totally even, and then I'm going to clamp it down so it can dry. Now that that's just had a few minutes to set, I'm going to go ahead and apply the second piece of wood. After the glue dries, I went ahead and filled in this tiny little seam here with wood filler, and this is what it looks like before the stain. On the back side, you see this is the smooth side of the 2-inch casing, and this is the back side of the second piece of decorative molding, and the canvas will sit in there. So now what I'm going to do is turn these upside down so the wrong side is facing up, and start attaching the sides. Okay, so I have one side already clamped to the table. I just put some wood glue on the inner corners. Try not to use a lot though, because I don't want to have to sand it off of that. That's kind of a pain in the neck. Then I just match it up as well as I can. I think that is as good as this one's going to get. Tighten my clamp. I have 3/8 inch staples in here. Uh-oh. My wood split. So probably what I'll do is I'll just remove this staple, stick a little bit of wood glue in there, and push it back into place. So I put some wood glue in here, stuck a notebook that's the right size in there to support it, and now we'll try again. There we go. So I think next time I'll stick the notebook under all my corners before I staple them. After I finished staining it, this is what it looks like by itself. I decided to add a separate little insert that I painted to kind of accent the colors in the painting. So I'm just going to use wood glue to attach this and then go over it with polyurethane. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found that helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and I'll see you next time.